Hey everyone, thanks for checking out today's podcast. This is the Private Lenders Podcast. Chris Haddon and Jason Balin here. We are going to be breaking down an important topic and strategy, and that is the many different ways, the several different ways that you can use self-directed IRAs in your business. That's for raising capital. You can potentially lend to them as a borrower that wants to borrow money from you, and how to utilize a self-directed IRA on your own to lend out your own money and earn a solid rate of return.
Self-directed IRAs is a lot more common than they were years ago when we were starting out, in 2007. Not that they hadn't been around for a while, but not as many people understood how to utilize them. And surprisingly today, there's still a lot of people that don't know how to utilize them. And unfortunately, a lot of people are self-dealing without them even knowing they're going to self-deal. So we're going to go obviously through some best practices, ways to raise capital with them, ways to lend it out to other individuals and things like that. And again, double check with whoever your custodian is, whoever controls the self-directed IRA. But, it gives you a lot of flexibility, and probably more flexibility than you think, as long as you're doing it the right way.
Yeah, let's start out by defining what a self-directed IRA is for people who don't know. Because a lot of people will hear that and they'll think like, oh yeah, in my IRA, I pick my own investments. I self-direct my own IRA. Sure. And it's actually a different animal. And let's talk about that real quick. So you have your traditional, I don't want to go too deep in the weeds, but your traditional sort of IRAs and retirement account world where someone like a Merrill Lynch or a Vanguard or something like that is investing your money in funds, right? Typically in different kind of funds, publicly traded, equities, bonds, stuff like that. Yes, you can pick where you want your money to be within those funds, but that's not what we mean by self-directed IRA. Out on the fringe of the world of retirement accounts is called self-directed IRAs, and there are custodians and administrators and companies that deal only in those. You might have heard of some of them like Equity Trust, Pensco, many smaller ones. And this is basically used for alternative asset investing. Like you can buy a piece of real estate, you can buy a property using your IRA. A lot of people don't know that's possible. If you called up Merrill Lynch and say, hey, I want to buy this rental property using my IRA, they would say, no chance. That's not what we do, right? You can also lend money. You can do traditional investing too through a self-directed IRA. Like you could take that money, like a friend of mine, friend of ours recently, he just had more of a balance in his IRA than he had deals to do. So he's like, okay, I'm going to scrape off a few $100,000 and just throw it into index funds, right? So you can do that as well. So, okay, that's what a self-directed IRA is. And let's talk about how it applies to the private lending business. The first thing I would mention is that for a lending company like ours, it is a very good source of capital. It is a great sort of investor to raise capital from that you can lend out. You earn your fees and your servicing fee and your points and stuff like that. They earn a nice rate of return, and it works great for everyone. This is one of our original sources at Hard Money Bankers back when we started in 2007. I remember one of our initial investors, and this was a relative of a business associate, had maybe around like 800,000, something like that, in a self-directed IRA because he heard it's a great, way to deploy money, earn a better rate of return. You have more selection of what you invest in. But the problem is he had no deals, right? So a lot of these people, and especially over the past 10 years or so, if they've had some trouble in the stock markets, equity markets, they're like, okay, I want to have some more options and not have those like ups and downs of the equity market world. But the problem is you have to have deals. And that's what people find themselves in, where you can come in if you're a private lending company and solve a problem of theirs. They're going to find themselves with a bunch of cash, a few $100,000, and nowhere good to put it.
Yeah. And keep in mind, most middle-aged working class folks have some sort of retirement account in general, right? They've been working for long periods of time. They have it. Maybe they're retired. Maybe they're not retired. But depending on, and then obviously some, if it's some sort of like government setup or some sort of pension, you're not be able to roll that over. But a lot of people had 401ks or some sort of retirement account. And I remember with this individual investor, he was interested in doing it, but didn't know how to. So we kind of learned together. Now I would say we're a little bit more kind of a black belt because we've been involved with lots of these, including our own over the years. But, we learned the process and he rolled it over. And like what Chris said, that's really interesting is a lot of people have the funds and are interested in it. But, this it's kind of like the joke is like first world problems of, okay, now I have $1 million in my self-directed IRA. Now what do I do? It all seems easy, right? It's like, oh, only if I had this much money I could lend out or buy properties with, what would I do with it? Well, when it comes real, like it's not all that easy to. And keep in mind, most of these folks, they're not active investors like you or me might be, right? They're not actively running a lending company or an investment real estate company. They have a regular job and a trade that they stick to. So they don't know how to deploy capital. They don't have an investment vehicle to deploy capital to. I remember we went to an equity trust event years ago, like shortly after 2007, after we started, because that was the place we were looking to raise capital from those investors. And I was so surprised. It was a place that every single person had money, but nobody had deals. It was interesting. It was interesting back then. And there's a lot more education, and there's a heck of a lot more companies, that facilitate that now, that control self-directed IRAs. So, but yeah, it's one of those things that it's a good source. And, think about it like this. Let's say you had, mindset wise, let's say you had $100,000 in liquidity right now in like cash, right? It was like that was your savings, right? That would be a little bit harder for you to really want to invest. Maybe I'm not saying you wouldn't invest it, but it's a little bit harder to get that out of your savings account and put that into a deal or investment than potentially if you have that same amount of money in a IRA or 401k. You're not looking to keep that money liquid. The entire purpose of a retirement account is for investment purposes. It's not going to sit in cash in a retirement account, right? It's good. The purpose of it is to invest. So I think mindset wise, for the raising capital side of this conversation, it was easier for us at the beginning to get that type of capital, to lend out.
Yeah, for sure. And let's talk real quick about where you can find these people. So Jason mentioned before going to a retirement account custodian's events, which they have them, conferences, marketing events, stuff like that. They do big ones, they do small ones. That one happened to be a big national thing, and there were hundreds of people there. And they also do, especially like post-pandemic when the stuff gets back to normal, they'll do smaller events in different cities, especially the bigger companies like Equity Trust and Pensco. And like we were saying before, these people need deals. There's nothing else that they can do with that money. Like if you're talking about someone's personal funds or someone's company funds, there's plenty of stuff they could do with it, right? Like you could use it and go, buy a boat. You could use it and put it into some other kind of, venture, if it's business capital, something like that. But there's really not that many things that a person can do with cash in an IRA. It's only invest, right? So in addition to those kinds of events, you can find these people at meetup groups and RIAs. It is not uncommon to find somebody with money in a self-directed IRA looking for deals. The problem is, and like we said before, two things. One, they don't really have deal flow. And two, if they get a deal referred to them, they don't know how to underwrite. This is not what they do. They're not professional lenders. And you'll ask these people all right, how'd you do the valuation on, this property you decide to lend on? Oh, well, the borrower gave it to me. Okay, well, there's a conflict right there, right? That's not a professional way to approach a loan or an investment of any kind, really. Or other things too. Are you set up to pull credit? Do you know how to make sure that the property is insured? They're not professional lenders. They're not going to be checking the right boxes. And that's where you can come in as a lending company, provide good deals, underwrite and document it properly, and deploy their funds in a profitable way for the both of you.
Yeah, and one other thing to add to that, there is a lot of folks that we know that are active real estate investors, and they use their own cash and lines of credit, or us or whoever, but they also have 401ks, and they need to deploy those 401ks, and they're savvy enough because they're in real estate investing that they want a higher rate of return. They want more of an active role in it, but they don't. We're going to talk in a second about lending money to real estate investors that own a property in self-directed IRA, but I think anyone from experience knows, we know, and if not, we're telling you that it's a clunky process. It's a heck of a lot easier to be a lender lending out your self-directed IRA than buying a property in a self-directed IRA. So there's so many people that we know that they're active investors, but they want to just bucket through a passive investment or self-directed IRA instead of owning real estate with it, because it's just easier for them. So keep that in mind as well, because it could be a friend, a family member, a borrower of yours, another real estate investor that has liquidity in a self-directed IRA that they rather just passively invest. with you. So
yeah, let's jump into a couple other topics on the self-directed IRA. All right, here's another one that is little known and should be better known by lenders out there. Sometimes you'll get a borrower coming to you who is buying a property with their self-directed IRA. They're buying a piece of real estate and they might not have all of it. Oftentimes, these people are buying it outright. They're using that cash from their retirement account, buying it free and clear. But sometimes they don't have enough, and they might be buying, say, a property for $300,000 and they only have $200,000 and they're looking for a loan. When they go to the vast 9 out of 10 lending companies they go to and say, hey, I'm buying in a self-directed IRA, can you lend to me? They'll tell them no, because they don't know how to structure it, and they're actually incorrect. We've done this before. Plenty of other savvy lenders have done the same. Here's how you do it. The one thing that you have to take out, the most important thing in an arrangement like that, when a self-directed IRA is buying a property and you're lending to it as the borrower, is that you cannot have a personal guarantee, right? You have to take that guarantee agreement out. It's a non-recourse loan. An individual cannot sign personally for their IRA as a borrower. Got it? Most important thing. Second part, definitely important as well, is you have to, if you don't have a personal guarantee, you have to adjust your underwriting in other areas like loan to value. If you would normally do 60 or 65% of a value, maybe you'll do 50 or less. In the example I just gave, and these happen for sure because they want to deploy the money. That's the point. They're not looking for that much leverage. Like in that case that I gave, they're buying a property for 300. They have 200 in cash. You're putting up 100. You're at a 33% loan to value. Great place to be, right? Who cares about a personal guarantee with all that collateral, right? So you can pick up deals. They come here and there, not all the time. This isn't super common, but it's a place where you can capitalize where your competition can't.
Yeah, it's a great way to generate it, and I think we had that aha moment early on. I mean, I think coming from the banking world before 07, we were like, oh yeah, we can't do these, just because that's what it was. And then we kind of had a reality check like later, the first year of business or second year, and it's like, you know what? I would rather have more equity security than a personal guarantee that may or may not be worthless, depending on if we can go after anything in case of default. Anyways, so we kind of have the rule of thumb, like Chris said, of if we're going to do a 65 LTV for a borrower, we'll do a 50% instead. So that extra 15% equity cushion is more valuable to us than the guarantee. And we adjust, we could adjust that lower if needed, but that's kind of a good place to start with to waive, to potentially waive that guarantee. And, on our end, it's not any more clunky to do these deals. On the borrower's end, it definitely would be more clunky, because what happens is, keep in mind, let's say it's James Smith IRA, let's say it's through Equity Trust. So Equity Trust is, the buyer of the property, and they have to contract the property with their IRA name, right? So it could be Equity Trust Company Custodian, FBO, James Smith IRA, right? Like that's the name of the buyer. Everything has to go that. Mm-hmm. That's the name of the borrower. So the reason it's clunky for them is they can't self-deal or commingle their own personal funds really on that. I mean, there's talks, and we've seen it kind of in the past, where you co-own something with your IRA, but I don't know. I think it's self-dealing. Some IRA companies say it's self-dealing. Some say, no, you can do it. But, one of the big things is, could it potentially benefit you personally? That's one of the triggers or one of the checklist items I would say. And to me, I think it does, right? Like I couldn't have got into this deal without my IRA. So anyways, so it could potentially benefit you personally. But regardless of that, everything has to be done that way. And that's why it's clunky, right? You can't make a monthly payment from your personal name. It's got to come from the IRA. You can't pay a contractor from your personal name. It's got to come from the IRA. Now, again, not that you as the lending company want to enable them to self-deal, but like it's more on them than on you, right? You're writing the loan to them. It's just clunky. Totally. And we do like to educate them so they understand, because most people aren't as sophisticated as you might be in this particular case, because you see these things on a regular basis. They don't. And they just heard from some guru that you can buy it in your self-directed IRA, which you can, but it's got to be done the right way. So I wouldn't shy away from doing a non-recourse loan if the collateral is good enough to do it. And there's a lot of deals where they might be buying it for $200,000 and they just need a loan for $50 because they have the other $150. One other point related to this is, depending on when you're listening or watching this podcast, this upcoming Wednesday, we're actually doing one of our monthly coaching calls through our mastermind, hardmoneymastermind.com. And it's in line with this exact topic. So it's June 9th, just FYI, depending on when you're watching this or listening to us, might have already happened, but you can go to hardmoneymastermind.com to check that out. And we're going to go a heck of a lot more in detail related to this, because this is stuff that happens every single, regularly in our business. And, we've seen a lot of it, but there's also an argument of, hey, you might not even, as an owner of a self-directed IRA that owns a piece of property, you lose a lot of the tax benefits anyways if you have high leverage on it, because arguably you're still getting taxed on the leverage piece that you. Yeah,
that's next level.
Exactly. I know it's next level, but that's
3.0.
But those are things that potentially we'll discuss kind of in that mastermind. So again, stick to the basics on this, but you cannot absolutely do it.
Absolutely. And then, just to wrap up on this topic. Okay. So a self-directed IRA is a great tool. As we've said, you should have one yourself. And that could be funds that you're just contributing. Like maybe you have a traditional IRA and you contribute $5-7 grand, whatever the annual limit is currently, or it could be a rollover. You could take an old 401k from a current or previous employer, roll it to a self-directed IRA and do some deals and some loans on your own. Here's the catch. We're going to talk about self-dealing that Jason mentioned before. You won't be able to put your own self-directed IRA funds into your own company's loans because you own that company and you're compensated personally by it. It would have to be outside of your company. And mind you, we know this inside and out because we do this ourselves. We've had self-directed IRAs at Equity Trust for many years now. And we have those going through a third-party company run by a friend. And we're not compensated personally. That's the main thing to watch out for when it comes to the term self-dealing. You don't want to be compensated personally. You don't want to get any money from this. And then there's other like more gray area stuff, right? Like, do these funds allow you to get into a certain deal? I don't know. I'm gonna get too deep in the weeds on that.
I mean, we can't invest in any of our deals. And honestly, it's really hard for us to even invest in any hard money loans. And the reason why is, there can be an argument that, oh, you took this hard money loan and didn't do it through Hard Money Bankers, and did it through your personal 401k or self-directed IRA instead. So, a lot of our self-directed IRA funds aren't even through that. They could be through another lenders that we're potentially passively invest in, things like that. So it just goes to show that like we're active investors and we still have a hard time placing our own self-directed IRA funds. It's easy for us to place other people's, but not our own, because we got to, we don't want to skate that line of self-dealing. And obviously the good part about using, some sort of reputable custodian is, they have legal and compliance that we can talk to kind of on a per transaction basis if you need to, but especially starting out, them helping you with a direction of investment form, which, is exactly what it says. It directs your investment of where you want to put it. So definitely something to look into. I think for folks that are not involved in probably all three of those things we just talked about, raising self-directed IRA funds from others, using your own self-directed IRAs to invest in some sort of deals, and lending out to real estate investors that have self-directed IRAs. I think they're all really good ways that you can, help grow your business.
Absolutely. And with that, please go check out hardmoneymastermind.com. You can join for free, get a free account, join the conversation, see what people are chatting about, use the free resources, content, everything else. And we hope to see you in there. Say hello. We're always in there day to day, responding to people's stuff, asking questions ourselves. And it's turned into a really cool private lending community. So check it out, hardmoneymastermind.com. And we will see you next time on the podcast.
See you guys. See you next week. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends and give us a 5-star review. We appreciate it.